Good afternoon, and welcome to our lesson on standard deviation. Earlier, we learned about mean, median, and mode. Now, standard deviation is something that you're probably unfamiliar with, but here's an example of why we have to use it. Let's say the salaries of 9 TCC instructors are shown in thousands, and we want to find the mean. Well, that's pretty easy, actually. If you want to find the mean, the first step will be to add everything up. Which, if you do, you get 450. Now, since there were 9 instructors measured, I would like to divide that number by 9. And 450 divided by 9 equals to 50. So that means from this, the average TCC salary is $50,000. Let's take a look at example 2. Let's say Chancellor Jean walks into a room where 8 unpaid interns are waiting. Find the mean. Well, we'll do the exact same thing. First, we will add everything up. So 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 450 is 450. And again, since there's still 9 people, we would still divide by 9. And 450 divided by 9 is still $50,000. But does it tell the whole story? Like in the first example, 50,000 was a pretty good mean because there are 3 people that are 50, others were 5 and 10 lower, others were 5 to 10 higher. But in example 2, it doesn't look like it tells the story at all. Like almost everybody made nothing and only one person made all the money. It's like the idea. Let's say Jeff Bezos, the guy from Amazon, he has a net worth of $134 billion with a B dollars. Now, if he walked into a homeless shelter where there's 133 people there, the average would be mean. The average of the mean would be $1 billion, but it doesn't mean everybody there is a billionaire. Far from it. So, this is where standard deviation comes in. Standard deviation is actually just a measure of how data is spread. The bigger the standard deviation, the more spread out the data is. Like, let's look at our examples. They all have the same mean. They're all 5. But the first standard deviation is 0.74. And I'm not surprised because the mean is 5 and most of the measurements were 5, a few 4s and a few 6s, but it's not really spread out much. Let's take a look at the middle example. It increased to 1.13. Well, the biggest one is still 5, but now it spreads out. There's some 4s, there's some 6s, heck, even a 3 and a 7. Now the third one has a standard deviation of 3.13. Although the mean is 5, there were no measurements that were 5. Half the measurements were 2s, and half the measurements were 8. And if you average 2 and 8 together, 2 plus 8 is 10. 10 divided 2, 5. So, you'll notice I already calculated values for standard deviation. But you're probably wondering, well, where did I get those numbers? How do you calculate standard deviation? And that's what we're going to learn about today. Okay, suppose we're given some numbers, 10 numbers. We want to find the range, mean, variance, and standard deviation. Okay, range is very simple. It's just big number minus small number. So looking at this list, the biggest number is 27, smallest is 11. That's equal to 16. Done. Okay. All right, mean. Mean is something we've been doing. So what I'd like to do is add up all the numbers and divide by 10. So 23 plus 11 plus 21 plus 27 plus 26 plus 26 plus 21 plus 23. Gotta make it a little more. Plus 23 plus 19. All equals to 220. But since there are 10 numbers, I would like to divide that number by 10. So that's equal to 22. So the mean is 22. Now, to find variance and standard deviation, I always like to set up a chart that looks like this. There's 4 columns, and the first column is values, which is all the individual values. The second column is mean, and we just found out the mean, it was 22. So that's why all the 22s are there. The third column is value minus mean, which means we're going to subtract across. So let's go to the next page and see what we can do. So steps to finding the standard deviation. First is find the mean. Check, we did that already. Next is subtract value minus mean. Okay, we can do that. Well, 23 minus 22 is 1. 11 minus 22 is negative 11. 21 minus 22 is negative 1. 27 minus 22 is positive 5. 26 minus 22 is positive 4. Then positive 4 again. Then 21 minus 22 is negative 1. 23 minus 22 is positive 1. And positive 1 again. And finally, 19 subtract 22 is negative 3. Okay, so we did value minus mean. So the next step is to square. Now, for those of you that don't know what square is, it means raised to a power 2. And if you don't know what that means, a better way of understanding squared is multiply a number with itself. So what I'd like to do here is for 1 squared, I would like to do 1 times 1. Oops. And 1 times 1 equals 1. Next, I'd like to do negative 11 times negative 11, which is 121. Next, I would like to do negative 1 times negative 1, which is positive 1. Then 5 times 5 is 25. Then 4 times 4 is 16. Then 4 times 4, that's 16 again. Oops, let's get it up there. Then negative 1 times negative 1, that's positive 1. Then 1 times 1 is positive 1. One times 1, that's also positive 1. And finally, negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. All right, good. Step 3 was to square each answer, and we accomplished that. Okay, well, step 4 is to add all the squared answers. So every answer we got, I would like to add them up. And I did that earlier. If you add it up, you get 192. Oops. Okay, good. Now the next step we're going to do is we're going to find the variance. And this is important. It says divide by n minus 1. And here's what this means. So the variance is going to equal to the total divided by n minus 1. So what that means here is, since there were 10 values, I'm not going to divide by 10. I'm going to divide by 9. So I would like to do 192 divided by, what happened? I would like to do 192 divided by 9, which is equal to 21.33. And that is the variance. Okay, so next is the standard deviation. So for standard deviation, that is equal to the square root of the variance. Let me see if I can squeeze that in. So what I like to do is, I would like to do the square root of 21.33. And that is equal to 4.62. And that is the standard deviation, 4.62. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is kind of tricky and drawn out. And it is. But the only way we'll get good at it is if we do some practice. So let's do 2 more examples. Okay, we're given a collection of 8 college students, and we like to find the mean and the standard deviation. So for the mean, what I like to do is find the total first. Let's add everything up. And I'll throw in the calculator. And if we do that, the total is 208. Okay, now what I'd like to do is do 208 divided by 8. And that is equal to 26. So right now the mean is 26. All right, very good. Now what I like to do is set up our chart. And in the chart that has mean, I like to put 26 in every single box. So let me do that. So do 26 here. And another 26 here, and another 26. And another 26. Just filling in 26, that's all I'm doing. Almost there. A couple more. Another 26. And finally, 26. Okay, good. So we accomplished that. All right, now for the next step, I would like to subtract across. So first, 18 minus 26 is negative 8. 22 minus 26 is negative 4. 27 minus 26 is positive 1. 28 minus 26 is positive 2. 21 minus 26 is negative 5. 27 minus 26 is positive 1. 31 minus 26 is positive 5. And then 34 minus 26 is positive 8. All right, excellent. So that's all accomplished. Now what I like to do with everything that I have in red, I would like to square it. In other words, multiply it with itself. So we're going to go down the list there. I'll change color purple. So what we'll do is negative 8 times negative 8 is 64, positive 64. Next, we'll do negative 4 times negative 4, which is positive 16. Get that in there. Yeah. Then 1 times 1 equals 1. Next is 2 times 2 is 4. Then negative 5 times negative 5 is equal to 25. And 1 times 1, which we did earlier, that's still 1. Then 5 times 5, that's still 25. And finally, 8 times 8 is 64. Excellent. So the square step is now complete. What I'd like to do next is I would like to find the total. Just add everything up. And if we do that, if we were to add up everything, our total is equal to, I wrote it down earlier, well, 200. All right. So the next step is to find the variance. And for the variance, we are going to divide n minus 1. So for the variance, we are going to do the total, which is 200, but I'm not going to divide by 8. I'm going to divide by 7. I always have to divide by 1 less. And if we do that, we get a decimal, 28.57. And that is our variance. Oops. Let me see if I can undo that. There we go. Variance is done. Finally, for our standard deviation, I'd just like to do the square root of the variance. That's going to equal to the square root of 28.57. Let's see if I can get the square root symbol in there. And that is equal to 5.35. All right, excellent. So that question is over. Let's see if I can highlight that. Okay, let's do one more together. Okay, we're given a sample of 7 test grades. Find the mean and sample standard deviation. All right, so for the mean, we're going to have to round to 1 decimal place as needed because we might have decimals. It could happen. So what we'll do is we'll first add up all the numbers. And if we add up all the numbers, we should get 584. All right, now what I'd like to do is I would like to do 584 divided by 7, and that's equal to 83.4. And that's our mean. All right, now what I like to do is take that mean and write 83.4 for every box under mean. So it's going to take a few minutes. So let's see what we can do. 83.4. 83.4. Luckily, there's only 7 numbers this time. It's not that much. Getting there, we're getting there. Almost. And 83.4. Okay. Okay. So now the next step is to subtract across. So we will do value minus mean. So let's take a look at that. So first, 87 minus 83.4, that's equal to 3.6. Then 75 minus 83.4 is negative 8.4. We'll get that. There we go. 83 minus 83.4 is negative 0.4. 89 minus 83.4 is 5.6. 72 minus 83.4 is negative 11.4. 94 minus 83.4, that's 10.6. And then 84 minus 83.4 is 0.6. All right, so we subtracted across. Now the next step is to square everything. In other words, multiply with itself. So with that said, 3.6 times 3.6 is 12.96. Oops. Let's see if we can squeeze that in better. I'll do it that way. There we go. All right, next, negative 8.4 times negative 8.4. That's equal to 70.56. Good. Next is negative 0.4 times negative 0.4, and that's equal to 0.16. All right, so next up is 5.6 times 5.6, which is equal to 31.36. So we're getting there. Oops, we're getting there. Looking good. All right. Next is negative 11.4 times negative 11.4. And that's equal to 129.86. 0.96, excuse me. Let's see, getting in there. Sure, we can get it in there. Okay. All right, next is 10.6 times 10.6. That's equal to 112.36. Get that in there. And then finally, 0.6 times 0.6 is equal to 0.36. All right, good. All right, so after everything is squared, the next step is to add everything. And if we get a total, the total will equal to 357.72. Okay, so now we're ready to find the variance. So for the variance, it's going to equal to 357.72 divided by 6, because there are only 7 values, so one less than that is 6. And for that, the variance is 59.62. So that part's over. Now for the standard deviation. So as for standard deviation, that's going to equal to the square root of 59.62. And that is going to equal to 7.72. And let me see if I can get that square root sign in there. Just like that. So that takes care of our lesson about standard deviation. If you have any questions, please email me anytime. Otherwise, tune in for our next video on 5-number summary. Thank you and have a great afternoon.